Because new research finds no link between prenatal cannabis use and early childhood developmental delays. A recent study published by JMA Network Open suggests that children born to women who use cannabis during early pregnancy are not at an increased risk of developmental delays, including speech, language, motor skills, or global developmental delays up to age 5.5. The study analyzed nearly 120,000 pregnancies through Kaiser Permanente, Northern California. Kaiser finally did something helpful. Researchers reviewed prenatal cannabis exposure confirmed either by self-report or toxicology tests and found no increased risk of developmental delays. This finding is significant as cannabis use among pregnant individuals in the U.S. has been on the rise, prompting the need for clear data on its impact on childhood development. Though previous studies have noted links between prenatal cannabis use and adverse birth outcomes, this study emphasizes that when accounting for maternal demographics, there's no clear association with developmental delays. Investigators encourage continued research on the effects of cannabis use throughout pregnancy to fully understand potential impacts. I'm happy as a mommy to finally see some actual research instead of just some scare tactics and prohibitionist rhetoric being pushed out through the mouths of doctors. So, I mean, I think this is awesome. I had an amazing, very healthy, easy pregnancy, but not everyone did. Listen, like a lot of women really are struggling, especially during the first trimester. And cannabis is helpful to them. And I love that we are actually getting some clear-cut research that is honest with us as opposed to trying to push a fear rhetoric. So I'm going to throw it back to you guys, something that hopefully we can find a way to not argue about today.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jenny Beth. This is fantastic news, and this is the first time that I've seen some positive news come out, because they're just trying to perpetuate negative outcomes in regards with childbirth and cannabis consumption. So I am fantastic. I'm ecstatic that this study has came out.
Yeah, man. This is the first time that it's been that this study has been conducted by non-melanated peoples. So it's real now. Put in the books.
Oh, God, Rico.
Man. And the baby's born. They're coming out now with this pizza-flavored formula because they're just really hungry.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to pizza. Right, Jason?
And to be fair, Rico, it didn't say that non-melanated people did the study. I would have to go and look. It could have been us, Rico. You never know, but once again, where's my picture of the little boy saying that's racist?
You said Kaiser. You said Kaiser did this study, right, Jenny?
No, they used the Kaiser health system in Northern California to get the patients, right? So they were looking at patients that were being seen through the Kaiser Permanente system.
Got it. I don't know no black people last name Kaiser. Just saying.
I would, I definitely.
That's not true. There's Kaiser Sose.
I was just gonna say that, bro.
Kaiser Wilhelm,
but not Kaiser Brose, like our Brose.
Oh boy, you guys are getting way too caught up on the Kaiser.
Yeah, but I'd really, on a serious note, I'd love to see some more detail into the studies. Like, if they have detail on the consumption methods of those mothers, expecting mothers. I've kind of been just like of the mindset that it's really not that bad to consume, like smoke cannabis. If you're pregnant, you're not really, you're not at more adverse effects than what you're breathing in from like the normal environment. So, the carcinogens that you're breathing in are probably worse than the cannabis smoke. But there's this identifiable, thing that you can say, hey, this endocannabinoid system of this child is, hyper effective, and it's affecting the other, parts of that child's development, like motor skills, like all of these things. And, I may or may not have some experience with this and noticing some of these traits and behavioral traits and the development. And I think it's all, obviously, this is all of this is just like data, and we just have to use the data to help us make informed decisions. But there's still a lot of places in the United States that will test the mother's blood or urine for THC, other substances, and so it's dangerous. And so even though these studies come out, like, I just want to say this with caution for expecting mothers out there: be careful. Make sure you understand where you're at. Make sure if you want to speak to your OB about it, do it, because there's no harm in just having a conversation. If that person turns around and wants to do something about the information you told them, well, that's wrong, and that person probably shouldn't be a doctor and take an oath to do their job. But I think that there's a lot of key benefits to cannabis consumption. Obviously, helps a lot of issues in a lot of people. So maybe it's not so bad from that prenatal age, but like there's definitely not enough research and studies yet. So hopefully this sparks more and encourages more, and we see more information coming out about this. But I think this was awesome.
Yeah, and I'm going to yes and that, because I do agree with you, and you guys got to be especially careful if you're on state-sponsored healthcare plans, because they will come and try and take your children in a lot of places, and it was definitely an attack on families, definitely an attack on specifically Black and brown families for the most part, but it's terrifying. And also, I think, we're not discounting the work that's been done in Jamaica. Like, no one is taking that away from anyone, but I think that it's nice to start seeing something happening in the U.S. That's been my frustration with a lot of the research and studies that have come out specifically in the United States, is that they're pushing prohibitionist rhetoric opposed to actually giving us empirically verifiable data that could possibly show that this plant isn't the bad guy that everyone thinks it is.
Here's what I gotta say about this. There's now a question about whether cannabis consumption by gestating women could pose a harm to children that they are growing in their womb. And so if we don't have definitive data one way or the other, we should immediately strike prosecution of women for having cannabis in their systems if they have a baby, because we can't afford to wait until the science is in to know or to mitigate the harm that's already being done to women who are being prosecuted as if they are endangering their child in vitro, when there's no science to definitively rule out that there might not be a harm. And so the harm that's happening now is not, is there a developmental issue with children? Although, to be clear, it has been shown that women that consume cannabis while they're growing a baby, those kids tend to grow up and go to Fish concerts. I mean, that's pretty fucking bad. But aside from that, we already know that the harm is the women that are being prosecuted, the money that is being spent to test for whether there's the existence of cannabis, the cost to society to pay for those testings, and the whole fact that that exercise is predicated on this idea that those women are creating harm to their children, and nothing could be worse. I mean, they talk about postpartum depression. Nothing could be worse for a sleep-deprived mother who's trying to figure out how to juggle feeding this munchkin and changing a diaper to be prosecuted for cannabis consumption, especially if they chose a delivery system, whether it was a suppository or an edible or something that didn't include smoking, which everybody says putting smoke in your lungs isn't necessarily the healthiest thing to do in general. But like, can you imagine what that's like? You're like, your best bundle of joy just came into the world and you're dealing with some bullshit case because a hospital tested you for cannabis, and some point in the last 30 or 45 days, you happen to consume a little bit of cannabis in some fashion. Like, that's just a massive injustice against women. And that's what this election in general is about, is making sure that we discontinue massive injustices against women.
Fair enough.